Oregon football is set for a busy month of June on the recruiting trail, and we're diving into your latest Oregon recruiting headlines on today's episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast. And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How we living? Hope everybody is having an awesome week and an awesome day. It is Friday, June 2nd, 2023. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast. Super happy to have you guys along for another episode. I'm a little under the weather today, so that might be why my voice sounds a little bit different, but heading into the weekend, got to get you guys some of that Duck content, some of that Oregon football recruiting talk that you guys always come for. I'm your guy when it comes to Duck football recruiting. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you're watching here on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres, always love hearing your guys' thoughts and future mailbag questions. Hop in the comments as well. You can also DM me and follow me on Twitter at mtorresports. So today we're doing an episode of the Oregon Recruiting Hour, where I'm going to basically just give you guys some quick hitters, some small updates, some more in-depth updates, just kind of keep things rolling here and get you up to date, up to speed on the latest in Oregon football recruiting. A little bit of intel here and there, some scoop, and then also some news and analysis. So without further ado, let's get into our first recruit of the episode. That is 2024 Phoenix, Arizona Mountain Point running back Christian Clark. What's the deal with Christian Clark? Well, he is down to 5 schools in his recruitment as he kind of winds things down. Christian Clark has announced the top 5 on Thursday. Top 5 schools of Florida State, Oregon, Texas, Georgia, and the University of Alabama. And really the big deal with Christian Clark, so he also has some official visits set throughout the month of June. He's actually going to be making out to each of his finalists. The only official visit that I didn't see him announce on social media was an official visit out to Alabama. Going to start things off this month in Tallahassee with an official visit with the Seminoles. Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles have definitely become a recruiting power once again in the era of NIL and the transfer portal as well, doing a lot of work in the transfer portal, one of the top hauls this offseason. And then you also have Christian Clark getting out to Eugene for his official visit next week. June 9th is the weekend that one of Oregon's top running back recruits, top running back targets for Carlos Lachlan in the 2024 cycle will be back in Eugene. He did take a visit to Oregon in April, so Ducks are sticking around in this recruitment and certainly making it a priority to get him out on campus. A little bit more on running back recruiting for Oregon in the 2024 class. Really looks like there's about 4 names that you got to know here. If you've been reading me for a while over on Ducks Digest or listening to me on this pod, Locked on Ducks, I do a lot of work with Spencer McLaughlin. You guys know who the guys are at this point, but just in case you don't, I'll give you a rundown of Oregon's top running back targets in 2024. You got Nate Frazier out of national powerhouse Santa Ana Mater Dei in California, Southern California. I'll be out to hopefully see him at the spring game later this afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. Then you also have Jason Brown Jr. out of Seattle, Washington, O'Dea High School. Dejon Riggs out of Washington, D.C., St. John's College. And then, of course, Christian Clark. Still trying to figure out the numbers game for Oregon at running back in the 2024 cycle. But if you're just looking ahead to next season, Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington will both be eligible for the 2024 NFL draft, and they're both expected to have big seasons for Oregon. I think that both of them are more than capable of putting up 1,000 yards in Will Stein's offense. So when you kind of take that into account, maybe it's to Oregon's benefit to take 2 running backs here in the 2024 recruiting class. Definitely important to keep that backfield just absolutely loaded with talent. And Carlos Lachlan has had no problem doing that as one of the best recruiters on Oregon's staff, going anywhere in the country for recruits, getting Dante Dowdell out of Mississippi in 2023, as well as Jaden Lamar in the Pacific Northwest out of Lake Stevens High School. So that's kind of the latest that we have right now on Oregon running back recruiting. Dejon Riggs will also be in town in Eugene for an official visit this month. working on seeing what the OV situation looks like for Nate Frazier and Jason Brown Jr. But that's kind of the first update that I wanted to start today's show off with. We got another top five that we got to get into a little bit here. We're talking about Springfield, Ohio cornerback Aaron Scott Jr. Aaron Scott Jr. is also down to 5 schools in his recruitment. Let me go ahead and see if I can get those up. I'm multitasking a little bit, so just bear with me for a second. Aaron Scott Jr., one of Oregon's top corner targets here in the 2024 recruiting class, down to a final 5 of Ohio State, Penn State, Tennessee, Michigan, and Oregon. Ohio is really a pretty talent-rich state that I think kind of tends to fly under the radar on a national scope. But they have some really, really talented guys, year after year. Their top running back, I can't remember his name right now, but he's committed to Michigan. So, that's going to be a heavily contested battle. I know the Buckeyes also have a commitment from James Peoples out of San Antonio. He was a guy that Oregon was involved with at one point. But Aaron Scott Jr. is definitely one of the highest rated corners that there is still on the board, uncommitted in the 2024 recruiting class. Looking at his 247 Sports composite profile, 4-star guy, 0.9665, number 56 player in the country, number 6 corner, and the number 2 player in the state of Ohio. Ohio State leads the crystal ball predictions right now. This one looks like it's going to be a hard pull for Oregon out of the state of Ohio. Almost 30 scholarship offers, now whittled down to 5, but maybe there's a reason to be optimistic that Oregon might be able to shake things up here. Well, Aaron Scott did get on campus in Eugene in the month of April, that final week of spring ball leading up to the spring game, and it looks like that trip made an impression on him. I think I saw a report or a story from Chad Simmons over at On3 that said that Oregon was a dream school of his growing up. Why not? Why would you not want to go to a dream school? So Aaron Scott is definitely a very high caliber guy, listed at 6 foot, 170 pounds, like I said, out of Springfield, Ohio. Ducks already have 1 corner committed in 2024 in Baltimore, Maryland, St. Francis Academy corner Ife Obadegwu, an All-American caliber talent. Also have a commitment from Michael Van Buren, his quarterback over at St. Francis Academy. But because Oregon took so many corners, I think it was 5 in the 2023 recruiting class just from the high school ranks, and then also added 2 corners from the transfer portal in Nico Reed and Kyrie Jackson. They're going to be a little bit more selective when it comes to who their next corner is in the 2024 class. Scott is not a guy that I think Oregon necessarily leads for. Like I mentioned, going to be tough to pull one from the state of Ohio away from the Buckeyes. But I think that Dakota Fields is definitely the leading candidate to become Oregon's next corner in the 2024 class. He's going to be taking his visit to Oregon, his official visit, that is, June 23rd, also set for an official visit to USC in the month of June. So like I said, Ducks are going to be selective when it comes to corners. You also have Bryce West out of the state of Ohio that the Ducks are going after. Xavier Brown out of Santa Ana Mater Dei. He's supposed to take his official visit, I believe, this summer. I saw a report of July 1st, but I don't think that makes any sense because July is typically the recruiting dead period. But he's supposed to take an official visit to Oregon before making his college commitment from a top 4 of Oregon, USC, Ohio State, and Alabama. So a little note there on Aaron Scott Jr., just another talented corner that Demetrius Martin and company are recruiting heavily here in the 2024 recruiting class. What else do I have here on my rundown? Here was another interesting little update. During the week, On3 Director of Recruiting Chad Simmons placed a recruiting prediction machine prediction in favor of Oregon to land 2024 number 1 offensive tackle Brandon Baker. And if you guys read my work and have been listening to me for a while, like I was saying, I just put my prediction in for Brandon Baker to Oregon last week. I know I wasn't the first one to make that prediction, but the Ducks did have some ground to make up in that recruitment following the departures of Adrian Clem and Vianney Telemaivau from the 2022 coaching staff. So just thought that was worth a quick mention, as you're seeing other industry experts, other recruiting analysts also, echoing a similar sentiment that Oregon is the team to beat for Brandon Baker. He's going to be making it out to Ohio State and Georgia for official visits this month. I also believe he's going to be making it out to Eugene for an official visit. Won't be during that June 23rd weekend, though, because that's when he's going to be in Athens. But I'm pretty confident Oregon will get him on campus this month. 2 other schools to watch in his recruitment. I think he said this at the On3 NIL event in Tennessee are Texas and Florida State. So I also think that there was an update. I couldn't read the whole thing because it was behind a paywall, but Simmons also said that Baker plans on committing this summer. So moving up that commitment timeline quite a bit. Brandon Baker was a guy who was telling me December, end of season commitment time frame, so he could be an early enrollee. I think that's still the plan, but he's moving up his commitment timeline. Again, don't have a date. Maybe I'll ask him if I can see him at Mater Dei later this evening. But I think that, again, him moving that up is also a good indication for Oregon in the 2024 class. Already have a pair of offensive linemen committed to Alik Terry in his first full recruiting cycle back in Eugene. You're looking at Trent Ferguson, 6'7", 6'8" offensive lineman out of West Salem High School in the state of Oregon. And then you also have Fox Crater, who has really taken off on the recruiting trail out of Vancouver, Washington, Evergreen High School. So the Ducks would clearly love to add a guy like Brandon Baker to the fold here in the 2024 recruiting class. Let's see what else we got here. We're also going to talk about Justin Williams. What's the story with Justin Williams, Oregon's top linebacker target here in the 2024 recruiting class out of Conroe, Texas, Oak Ridge High School. The update with Justin Williams, they're also recruiting Dylan Williams, so bear with me. But the update with Justin Williams is that he just locked in his official visit to the University of Georgia earlier this week, as Justin Williams will be making it out to Athens for that big June 23rd weekend as well. So not necessarily a great update if you're Oregon. You'd love to get your top linebacker target on campus for that big weekend, but he did announce that he was going to be taking his official visit with Georgia on June 23rd through 25th. What do we know about this recruitment? Well, it's largely down to 3 schools. I think that's kind of how I view it after talking to Williams multiple times throughout this recruiting process, down to a unofficial final 3 of Oregon, Alabama, and Georgia. So couldn't ask for harder competition to go toe-to-toe with on the recruiting trail if you're Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. But there's a lot of reason to be confident here that the Ducks can pull off landing Justin Williams. I think, Justin Williams, you pair him with guys like Dylan Williams out of Long Beach Poly here in Southern California, Kamar Matudi, also out of Southern California, Campbell Hall High School, 2 just athletic freaks. You see Justin Williams move on tape, and it's no surprise that he was a former safety. I think that's just a really interesting development in college football and high school football. You see how he moves, and you see how he can tackle in open space, and he's got the physicality for it. So that's really big. I believe that Williams, I don't think I saw this update, but I think that Williams is also going to be taking that Georgia official alongside his teammate at Oak Ridge, 2024 defensive lineman Joseph Jonah Ajonye. So the Ducks still are, but they were more heavily involved perhaps with both of these guys earlier on in this cycle. They've talked about teaming up at the next level. But I think that if you had to ask me, I think that Justin Williams is definitely more of a priority for the Ducks than Joseph Jonah Ajonye. Would just kind of be a plus if they're able to pair up at the next level, specifically at Oregon. Ducks are going after some seriously elite guys along the defensive line, in addition to Joseph Jonah Ajonye. But Justin Williams has been to Oregon 5-6 times, got back out there this spring, which is definitely a good update for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. And I still think that they're the team to beat in this recruitment. They've been involved for so long. Williams always has really, really good things to say about Oregon, and I think that he's one of those guys that can help take Oregon's defense to the next level. Definitely kind of emerging as a must-get recruit for Oregon here in the 2024 recruiting cycle. Justin Williams, that's the little update that you got there. Heading to Athens for his Georgia official visit, June 23rd. Not necessarily a super Oregon-centric update, but that's one of Oregon's top guys here in 2024, so certainly worth a mention. Next up on the Oregon Recruiting Hour, we're going to be talking about one of Oregon's top edge rusher targets here in the 2024 recruiting class. That's Tucson, Arizona, Sal Point Catholic edge rusher, 5-star guy, Elijah Rushing. Previously there were some reports that he was going to be taking his official visit to Oregon this weekend, June 2nd, but that is not the case. It looks like it's been rescheduled. I was able to text back and forth a little bit with Rushing this morning on Friday, and it looks like he's actually going to be taking an official visit to Arizona. The in-state Wildcats, led by Jedd Fisch, will be hosting the five-star edge rusher on campus for an official visit this weekend. Rushing was most recently out in Westwood for an official visit with the UCLA Bruins, and he'll be taking his official visit to Oregon now on June 16th, which is also shaping up to be a pretty big official visit weekend for Oregon, where they'll be welcoming guys like Luke Moga, one of their two quarterback commits in the 2024 class. Important to note, also from the state of Arizona, like Rushing. He's been recruiting him since he committed to Oregon. Luke Moga has, and then you also have Aaron Flowers, one of Oregon's headliners in 2024, safety out of Texas. He's going to be on campus as well. So that's a big update. I think that right now for Oregon and Elijah Rushing, I think that there's been a lot of buzz around Notre Dame as another team that is really firmly in contention here. I think the update with Arizona is that his brother Cruz Rushing was at Florida, has now transferred back to Arizona. So you kind of have that brotherhood aspect that's maybe pushing Jedd Fisch and the Wildcats up a little bit in this recruitment. But Oregon has been at the very front of this recruitment for Elijah Rushing since the moment Dan Lanning got hired. So many visits out to Eugene. Didn't visit for the spring game like was originally planned. Moved that visit up a week, and they got to focus on him as their main unofficial visitor, and really just he goes to Oregon so much, like he knows what it is every time. It's family. He's talked about the importance of playing under guys like Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi. That's really what's keeping Oregon heavily involved here with Rushing's recruitment. Him alongside Brandon Baker are probably the two five-star guys I think I'm most confident in Oregon landing here in the 2024 recruiting class. And then you're also going after guys like Jordan Ross out of the state of Alabama and Aiden Breland out of Santa Ana Mater Dei, the best defensive lineman on the West Coast here in 2024. So those are some significant updates. Little programming note on Elijah Rushing. And then here's another guy that here's a guy, Chris Collinsworth, coming at you on this Friday. Seriously, here's another guy that I'm actually pretty excited to talk about. I've been trying to get a little bit more scoop, a little bit more intel on what's going on with one of Oregon's other top edge rusher targets here in the 2024 recruiting class. The huddle film is loading right now, but we're going to be talking about 2024 Duncanville, Texas edge rusher Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons is a name that has been on Oregon's radar for quite a bit. The Ducks have been incredibly active in the state of Texas, but ever since he didn't make it out to Eugene for the Oregon spring game, I was kind of wondering, kind of asking myself in the back of my mind, how much of a recruitment, contender are the Ducks in this one for Colin Simmons? And what do we know? What do we know about Colin Simmons is that he is going to be taking a pair of, or a trio, I should say, of official visits this summer so far. Looks like he has official visits according to Sam Spiegelman of On3. He's going to be taking a trio of official visits. June 9th, he'll go to Miami to see Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. June 16th, he'll be in Eugene for his Oregon official visit. So they'll have Rushing and Simmons on campus at the same time. Can probably sell that, that possible duo. I put my dream class together, and I think the numbers obviously get pretty tight. And I put Elijah Rushing and Jordan Ross as the edge rushers that I think I'm most confident Oregon can land. But getting them back on campus is huge. And then he's going to be going to Austin, back in his home state of Texas, to visit with Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns. Talking to some sources in Eugene, I think that the main contenders in this recruitment for Colin Simmons, five-star edge rusher, again, out of the state of Texas, you got Oregon, you got the Texas Longhorns, and then you also have the LSU Tigers. So I'm trying to find right now if Colin Simmons is actually down to a certain top group of schools. But at least from what we know now, Oregon is really in the thick of it. against teams like LSU and Texas. Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns have been a really solid recruiting power, ever since he got on campus and took that job. They've been top contenders for in-state guys. And Oregon, this isn't the first time Oregon's going against Texas for a recruit. They were right in the thick of it for DeSoto wide receiver Jonte Cook in the 2023 class. He was down to Oregon, Texas, and Michigan. And he even said that Oregon was his number 2 school when it came time to make that college commitment. So there's some reason that Oregon should be able to make some noise in this recruitment. So many Texas ties on the staff, so many Texas ties on the roster. Just looking at last year, you got Terrence Green, defensive lineman out of Texas. Ashton Porter, defensive lineman, edge rusher out of Texas. Tyler Turner, safety out of Texas. Johnny Bowens II, defensive lineman out of Texas. Ashton Kozart, wide receiver out of Texas. So Oregon is hitting Texas hard. And Colin Simmons is really becoming, one of the faces of Oregon's recruiting efforts in the Lone Star State in 2024. So I think that Oregon has some ground to make up. But they're definitely staying alive in the Colin Simmons sweepstakes right now, if you want to call his recruitment that. One of the very best in the country when it comes to getting after the quarterback, and just an explosive talent off the edge with his hand in the dirt, standing up, incredibly quick, incredibly athletic. And this is a difference maker kind of a guy, and Oregon is still in the mix. All right, who's next on the Oregon Recruiting Hour? Appreciate you guys being along. Go ahead and hit that like button for me, and keep supporting the channel. Greatly appreciate that. I think we have one more guy that I want to get into, and it's actually a 2025 recruit. So this is going to be an interesting one. Make sure you guys stick along for this one. We're going to be talking about Keelan Moses. Who is Keelan Moses? Well, giving you the rundown here over on 247 Sports, looking at his profile. He is a 2025 athlete out of University Lab High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Man, isn't that something? He's coming from a place that Oregon really hasn't been too involved in. I mean, they offer guys out of Louisiana, they host guys from Louisiana on visits, but there really hasn't been that big name recruit from Louisiana that Oregon has signed. I've been covering Oregon for 5 years now, and I couldn't even tell you the last guy that Oregon signed out of Louisiana. I mean, Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers have a very good hold, very good pulse on the best prospects in that state. And then you have a bunch of guys, a bunch of other schools from the SEC that are coming to Louisiana all the time. Florida, Miami, Florida State. And then you also have Clemson in the mix, Oklahoma in the mix, certainly have Texas in the mix as well. But Keelan Moses is one of the best recruits out of the state of Louisiana in 2025, rated a 4-star guy on the 247 Sports Composite, .9484, number 125 player nationally, number 6 athlete in the 2025 class, and the number 3 recruit in the state of Louisiana in the 2025 cycle. Already has 19 recruiting offers. And did I mention he's an athlete? These guys always intrigue me, the athletes that can play all over the place. Listed at 6'2", 210 pounds. If you look in his bio, it says running back / linebacker / athlete. I think you even saw a couple of DB reps here. So why am I telling you about Keelan Moses? Well, there's some interesting notes that you got to be aware of here. First of all, he's expected to make it out to Eugene later on this month, in the month of June. And if that Moses name sounds familiar, then that's a good catch, because his older brother, Dylan Moses, played under, who was it? Oh, that's right, Tosh Lupoi, Oregon's defensive coordinator, while he was at Alabama. Dylan Moses made a name for himself as one of the best linebackers in all of college football, and Oregon is looking to, utilize that in with Tosh Lupoi as some leverage in this recruitment. Maybe that gives them a bit of an entrance into this recruitment, because like I said, Oregon hasn't been super involved in the state of Louisiana, and that is a talent-rich state, no doubt about it. So I love that Oregon is kind of pushing into the 2025 class a little bit. I talked last week or earlier this week about the commitment of Sandman Thompson out of the state of Florida. So getting some of that momentum going, even along the offensive line. Also have a commitment from wide receiver Dallas Wilson out of the Tampa area in Florida. So both of Oregon's 2025 commits coming out of the state of Florida. definitely a state that Oregon wants to prioritize as much as possible going forward, but certainly probably the hardest state to pull from if we're just talking about geography, right? And all of the other schools that are, constantly going after top Florida recruits. So I think that the 2024 class is an awesome spot in the summer, right? You got 2 quarterbacks in the fold, you got a bunch of talented wide receivers, and you got some more guys that are going to hop in the boat this summer. And then now you're in the position where you can push ahead a little bit more to the 2025 class. Those guys obviously have 2 full years of high school football remaining, but it's important to, do well this current recruiting cycle and then push ahead even further into the 2025 recruiting cycle. And it looks like that's what Dan Lanning and this Oregon staff are working to do. Texas and Louisiana, do not be surprised at all if the Ducks continue to make some noise in those states, particularly Texas, but keep an eye out on Louisiana and some top guys from the boot making it out to Eugene for some visits, giving the Ducks a serious look. Those are the kind of moves you need to make if you want to get this program to a national championship level. I think that's pretty much all I had for you guys on today's episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Appreciate you guys rocking along with me, tuning in wherever you're tuned in, whether it's on podcasting platform or YouTube. Really appreciate the support for you guys. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons for me. Totally free, takes 2 seconds out of your day, and is a tremendous help for me. Really, really appreciate that. But that'll do it for today's episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at mtorresports. Everybody have an awesome weekend. Share the show with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. And until next time, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.